Welcome to the Multifamily Women podcast. I'm your host, Carrie Antrim. My guest today is Arlene Mayfield, who has built her career at the intersection of sales, leadership, and multifamily housing. She's the Executive Vice President of Sales and Marketing at PetScreening. Her work spans Proptech, renter expectations, pet policies, inclusive leasing, and the role of data in driving performance. Arlene, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Carrie. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you here. Listen, I want to start with your path because you've been in the industry for a while, a minute or two.
Long time.
And you have led sales at some of the most recognizable names in rental housing. What first brought you into multifamily and what has kept you here?
I think like most of us, we've stumbled into it, right? Maybe we're doing something different and we said, hey, this might want to be something I do on the side. And for me, while I was going to school, believe it or not, to be a paralegal, I was working at a real estate company and found myself managing office buildings at the time and retail centers. And that kind of led to me going back into that after I decided not to be a paralegal and moving into multifamily. What's really kept me involved is I would say the ever-changing environment of multifamily. You know, when I started in multifamily many, many years ago, and you're right, it has been not a hot minute, but a minute, because I've done it for a very long time. I've just really been impressed with how we've evolved over time and really, especially since the pandemic, things have sped up so dramatically. And where we were an industry that had been lagging, we really are leading on the forefront now, especially in the Proptech area.
That's really nice. That's refreshing to hear you say that because, we've heard the opposite of that for so long that you're right. Things are going so fast. And it's nice to hear that perspective.
Yes, absolutely.
So you now lead both sales and marketing at the executive level. Mm-hmm. How has your view of leadership changed, as your roles have changed?
Yeah, great question, right? I think my roles have evolved over time to an individual contributor, to maybe managing a small sales team, to now I feel like, yes, while I lead, I wouldn't say manage, I lead because I have an amazing team. Sometimes I manage more upward, right? Mm-hmm. You're managing the executive leadership team, you're managing a board of directors. And I would say, that's been my role over the past probably a decade and a half in the different roles that I've had, whether it be the previous company where I was at, where I was managing, 2 of the top 5 private equity firms, as well as leading a team, to today where I have the fortunate opportunity to have 2 private equity firms that have a majority ownership of the business. So they still recommend and guide, but we really get to make our own decisions. But I would say I enjoy both aspects. We'll do 170 conferences this year, believe it or not. And so I don't attend near all of those or not even many of those, but I attend a lot of those. So being in front of the clients, being with the sales team and allowing myself to really absorb and understand what's happening in our industry and bringing that back into whether it be our leadership team meetings or the board meetings, I think really helps us be proactive and stay ahead of what's happening in the industry.
Yeah, so it sounds like you kind of thrive in that position where you said, you're maybe managing up, you're leading teams. Yeah. You're kind of in the center of everything. Is that challenging or is it ever scary or hard or you just love it and you're just rolling?
I do love it. And I think like I said, I've been doing it probably for about 15 years now. Uh-huh. So I'm used to it. And don't get me wrong, there are times when it's stressful, but I think especially now, as I said, the environment that I'm in, we're so collaborative, whether it be at the board level or at the executive level, or even with my team, we just collaborate and we're growing so much. As an example, when I started at PetScreening 2.5 years ago, we had 100 employees and 5 salespeople. And in my previous role, at one point, I indirectly managed 350 salespeople. So it just seemed so manageable and easy. And now we've grown to 20 salespeople and we're actually adding some more. But it's just all collaborating, and going from 100 employees to 200 employees at PetScreening over 2.5 years has been tremendous and explosive growth, but we're all doing it together. So I think having that, they always say leadership starts at the top, and I think we truly have that where I'm at today at PetScreening with John Bradford and the rest of the leadership team. And so we just are really able to grow and blossom as a team. That doesn't mean there's speed bumps along the way. There always are. It's not always rosy, but we solve the problems together, which is very liberating and very refreshing. And that doesn't happen in many organizations.
No, absolutely not. I'm amazed. That sounds like you've really set up a great culture of, like you said, collaboration, where you're not having to face all these challenges individually, right? You're able to come together as a team. That's really nice.
Yeah.
I love
and we always put the customer and the resident first. And so I think when you're in an organization that does that, that really puts all the egos aside, and we know what our North Star is and what we're working towards.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you touched on this a minute ago, but I kind of want to shift to where the industry is heading, because this is where I think your perspective is really interesting. Proptech is obviously everywhere right now. From where you sit, what separates the technology that actually moves operations forward from just the noise? I think it's so hard to sift through all of these things that are coming at us every day. What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, I think really being, as I said, we do go to a lot of conferences. We are listening to a lot of different industry trends. And I would say what we're really looking for and looking at is to see what our clients are looking towards. And we are trying to collaborate with them, and I'm not going to say follow them, but collaborate with them to move forward. So right now, there's a lot of focus on, I think we all know, the resident experience. And what is that resident experience, and how are we improving the resident experience? Rents are down, occupancies are down, things continue to be challenged. And we're facing, our third or fourth year of this right now, where we, it used to be quite cyclical, and we saw every 5 to 7 years things change. That didn't happen. And so now a lot of people don't know how to deal with that. So we're really forming strong partnerships with the PMSs, as well as really looking at secondary partnerships to say, how can we make it easier for on-site teams, for the operations teams, which then make it a better resident experience.
Right.
And that's really where we are looking for the trends and looking for those doors to open to continue that growth.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And what are you seeing? Are you seeing anything specifically that is trending right now with resident experience? What are they looking for, or how has it changed?
Yeah, I think everyone's trying to keep that resident longer. So anything that you can do to simplify any policies that you have on site, to simplify anything that the on-site managers are doing. I often hear that the on-site managers are in sometimes a dozen platforms on a daily basis, and an RVP might go to a property and they see 12 different tabs open on their screen, and they go, how can you manage all of this? So really simplifying that so the on-site manager has an opportunity to spend more time with the resident, making it better resident experience, building that relationship, sitting down and maybe having a cup of coffee with them, or a popsicle on a hot afternoon that we're all experiencing these days.
Yes.
I think really following those trends to make that, on-site experience better, which translates to the resident, is really, I think, what most of us are focused on right now.
Yeah, I love that. And as these, resident expectations keep evolving, what are operators underestimating, do you think, about what it takes, like you said, to keep the resident longer? Is there anything that they're missing or just not seeing happening?
I think that one thing that we're seeing right now is consistency, that if they can have consistent processes on site, that gives a consistent resident experience. So as the residents are out at the pool having conversations, they all feel like they're being treated fairly. I think that is something that maybe was underestimated 12 to 18 months ago, that we're seeing really come to fruition. And really, I would say the first half of this year and moving into the second half of this year, we see that those things are really transpiring.
Yeah, that makes sense. And now, speaking on pets specifically, because pets are obviously a huge part of our lives, mine included, pet policies used to kind of be like an afterthought, or just, oh, we better have something in place. Like, I don't know, what are we going to do, right? But now they touch revenue, retention, risk. what should executives be rethinking about how their portfolios handle pets? And has that expectation changed over time?
I think it is changing, and I think it will continue to change over time as we and others are getting the message out about pets. 70% of the rental households, based on the data that we look at, have pets. I think that if you talk to most operators today, they would see we see about 20% of our residents saying or admitting that they actually have a pet.
I was going to say, they're admitting it, right?
Yeah. So we really try to bring that to the forefront. And as rents and occupancies are down, we're trying to communicate, whether it be to asset owners, really more to property management companies, that there is an opportunity to have that ancillary revenue piece for the pet rent really increase over time. And this is where I said a minute ago, we're really forging these deeper partnerships with the property management software systems, because if we're partnering with them and we can help identify some of that lost pet rent maybe, then it's easier for them to identify, and we're working together almost in a triangle: the property management company, the property management software system, and PetScreening. So we're really trying to do our best to get that to the forefront. On top of that, I think we all know that there have been some recent changes, and there continue to be changes, it seems like, every couple of years with HUD and how they're thinking about their policies and how that falls into fair housing. So we are really trying to help whether it be the onsite teams, the operations teams, oftentimes the legal teams, because they're handling a lot of those ESA requests, take the burden off of them and giving them a deeper knowledge combined with an innovative technology with outstanding customer support, which we've established over time, to give them a better pet policy solution.
Yeah, I mean, it's been over a decade since I have rented an apartment, but I just remember that being a barrier to entry, right? Because if you have a cat or a dog or two dogs, heaven forbid, then it was like, oh my gosh, my rent has now gone up this much, and then I have to pay this much more in deposits, as well as having to qualify for the apartment in the first place and all these things. So are you seeing that with these new policies, the owners and operators, it sounds like you're doing your part on educating the owners and operators on this is what you need, this is how you smooth out the process. Are you seeing that be true? Like, is it helping with the residents?
Yeah, and actually we do have some partners today, some clients today, that have taken off the weight restrictions, the breed restrictions, to say we have so much visibility now into our pets. And I always say that when you use a company like PetScreening, you know your resident demographic because you've screened them. Well, now we're screening your pets for you. You know your pet demographic. And so that really gives you the ability to say, I know Arlene's pet, I know Carrie's pet. We have labs, for example, and they're English labs. They're 105 pounds each. They clearly are not apartment dogs. But if they were, they sleep most of the day anyway. Yeah. At least you would know what the risk is of having, our two labs in your apartment community. And so being able to bring that to the forefront, I think, is allowing some operators to say, if we can, maybe there's still a pet deposit or a pet fee, but maybe we're reducing that pet rent based on the knowledge that we have on those pets. It makes it more affordable for people to come in. Yeah. It helps with resident retention, which we've already touched on, that resident experience. And it makes it more of a pet, we don't call it pet friendly anymore. We call it pet inclusive, because we think that pets are a part of everyone's life. And as you said, you've got them as well, to make properties more pet inclusive, whether it be a rental home or a multifamily property, is really where we're finding the trend and where residents want to be. Right now, there are more pets in apartments based on the data that we're looking at than there are children. And so, that I think goes with our aging population, and it goes with people maybe not having as many children as they did before, but really having a pet solution is critical.
Yeah, I think that's great. Not to mention the fact that if the community a resident is coming into is so inclusive, pet inclusive, then they're not having to hide it. And then they don't have to worry like, oh man, my dishwasher's broken, but I have to, send my dog.
Right. What am I going to do with my pet while the maintenance person comes in? That's exactly right. And that happens today all the time.
Oh yeah. Yes. That's so funny. So I love the pet inclusive, and you speak about inclusive leasing practices. What does that look like in day-to-day operations? And where should a team start if they want to, become more inclusive?
Yeah, I think the first thing is having a standardized platform that simplifies the pet policy management across the entire portfolio. Having your property teams know that they're saving time, reducing risk. Again, I talked about consistency, having a more consistent resident experience. And that allows them to uncover, as I said, those revenue opportunities through compliance and visibility. So just making the decision to have that is critical, I think, in properties being pet inclusive.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about the role of data in driving performance, and you mentioned consistency across the platforms. And a little while ago, you mentioned having 12 tabs open. I have to admit, my computer probably has 24 tabs open. I don't know.
Same.
I joke
Same
that
for me.
it's my brain. My brain has 100 tabs open all the times. But where do you see teams collecting data but never actually using it or like its fullest potential?
Yeah, so I think, again, I know I've talked about this twice now, having things integrated, whether it be in the property management software system or in another platform that they're using, allows them the most visibility and allows them to have the data at their fingertips. When things are being used outside of a system, and we hear this all the time, can you please integrate with this system or integrate with this platform? Because people want to make sure it's simple and that people are using the data. I think also, there's always the question on, do you push reporting or do you allow somebody to pull reporting? And I think a lot of companies struggle with that. And we're trying to figure out that balance as well, because we want to be able to push reporting so people know what they have and they don't have to go gather it. But at the same time, people are inundated with emails. So how do you make sure that you're giving them the data that they need? They're getting the results that they not only want but expect. And so I think that's a balance as well in technology and in getting them what they need and educating them and giving them the expertise and those tools. And it's like a habit, right? Once you form that habit, whether it's exercising or whatever your habits are on a daily basis, it's like, I always say it's getting up, getting out of bed, brushing your teeth, taking a shower, looking at your reporting, like knowing what's happening at your property is key to success.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned, your team does, I think you said 170 conferences a year, and you guys are all over the place. You're interacting on a daily basis with your clients and your ideal clients, potentials. What are you seeing that the strongest teams in this industry have in common? Is there anything they're all doing that's just, you see that and you're like, that is a strong, cohesive team, like they've got their stuff together?
It's hard, right? Because there's so much changes. Properties change hands all the time. We know the on-site teams tend to change, properties as well as, the upper management. I think where we see people be really successful is when there is a lot of training and there's a lot of education and there is open dialogue, and where we see property management companies are just starving for education, not only about maybe a platform or technology that they're using, but just the industry as a whole. And when, I think unfortunately, when times are a little challenging like they are right now because occupancies and rents are down, people may be pulling back on conferences or just sending their people to conferences. I think that that's sometimes a challenge because they're not getting that information up front. And we're not always learning. I think where we see people happy is when they've got that learning platform, and they can continue to improve, and they want to improve because I think most people want to improve the resident experience and want to improve themselves and say that they're learning more. So giving them that I think is key.
Yeah. And what is it, speaking about, PetScreening specifically, what does the customer journey look like? What is it like to work with you and to come on board? And how does that process work for your clients?
Yeah, we really try to simplify the process. So we know that, today, if we are allowing the resident to fill out their pet screening application, we call it a household pet profile or their assistance animal profile or no pet profile. We know that if they're filling that out upon moving into the community, it gives the on-site team visibility on whether they have a pet, they don't have a pet, or they need an ESA. And so having all of that integration within the property management software system to where it automatically gives an application to that resident as soon as they are filling out their resident application, we know that that is the most simplistic. And then as that is completed, we do a lot of training on site, as well as with the leadership team of the property management company or asset owner, to ensure that they know what to do once all of that information comes in. We actually give something called a FIDO score, similar to a
I
FICO
love
score,
that so
that will
much.
rate the pet. And so that allows them to charge, a larger pet deposit or fee or increased pet rent. It also gives them, just again, that knowledge that I just talked about. And so we just make sure we take that burden off of the on-site teams, or as I said a minute ago, the legal teams, or
Right.
maybe RVPs are looking at the ESAs. So taking that burden off of them and simplifying it. I was actually at a big client dinner last night that had multiple clients there, and the overarching comment was, you take the burden off of us and we don't have to worry about anything. That's really what we try to do. We try to take that burden off and, make people's life easier for both the residents, empower the property teams, and giving them measurable results for the owners and the operators is really what we're after.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you mentioned it, taking the burden off the on-site teams so that then they can show up better for the residents. Maybe they're planning resident events, including the pets and things like that. I would imagine that they're a lot more willing to be interactive and, have, I don't know, more fun things to do for the residents and their
That's exactly right.
pet
We
friends.
also watch the HUD guidelines, as I said, because they do change. It seems like
Yeah.
whenever there's a new administration, the HUD guidelines change. So we stay on the forefront of that for them. So they don't have to worry about any of that. We're informing them of what's happening. And since we've been around for about 9 years, we have millions and millions of, screenings that we've done over time. And in doing all of those screenings, we really can guide people as to what some of the trends have been and what to look for. And that guides us to what we're doing, as well as we're seeing those trends change.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. So before we wrap, is there any piece of advice you would give a leader in this industry who wants to keep growing? You obviously have grown your career throughout the years, and you're in an amazing spot now. How did you do
Thank
that, or
you.
what advice would you give to someone who kind of wants to follow in those footsteps?
Thank you for the compliment. I
Of
appreciate
course.
that. I think more than anything, the multifamily industry can be intimidating, whether you're new to the industry or whether you're trying to move up in the industry. And look, there's a lot of newcomers, and I think we welcome newcomers. We want people to grow. You are a great example of that with the conferences that you put on. So I think what I would say is, getting involved in the industry, whether it be on a local level. I think many of us started there. As I moved across the country, the first thing I did was go to the local apartment association and make sure I got involved in a committee. And that led to being, involved on the board. But that allowed me to meet a lot of people, and they were always very welcoming. So I think there are a lot of people that are looking for mentorship, and we do that amazingly well as an industry. So I would say, don't be intimidated. Jump in with both feet. Ask questions. Look, we're all continuing to learn. All of us learn on a daily basis. While I've been, in the industry for over 40 years, I'm still learning, and I thrive on that. So please get involved, reach out to people, and we're always happy to help.
I couldn't agree more with that. And I think it's so funny that the multifamily industry might be foreign to people. They don't know the terms, our jargon, our lingo, that we use. But when you come in, it's all about hospitality, right? We're all trained
Absolutely.
to make residents happy, clients, customers, shareholders, investors, right? Everything we're
That's
doing
right.
is to make it cohesive and frictionless for the people that we work with. And I think you're so right about the mentorship and jumping in. I've never been in an industry where it's been so positive to meet other people, and people are so willing to help, and they want to share their expertise. And yes, this is how I did it. This is what was scary about it. This is how all of these things. So I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, and I think it's just, that's why we never get out of it. Like, so many
Yeah.
people leave and say, okay, I've had enough. I can write a book with all of my stories. You hear like on-site managers talk about that all the time. And they go, I'm leaving to another industry. And then sure enough, a year later, they're like, I tried it, it didn't work. And now I'm back. Right. And we're like, yay, you're back. So I think that happens all the time. And, it's just an amazing industry. We're very supportive of one another. And it's very rewarding, right? Very
Yeah.
rewarding.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me. We're looking so
Thank
forward
you.
to seeing your team at the summit. Can't wait to have you all there.
We're excited too.
Yeah, it's going to be so fun. This was a great conversation, so I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us, and I'm sure our listeners will
My pleasure.
Find a lot of value out of this.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Okay, for everyone listening, the Multifamily Women Summit is where conversations like this one, they continue in person. Get registered for the summit. Find every episode of the podcast at multifamilywomen.com. Thanks for listening, watching, and we'll see you in the next one.